Hello everyone, it's Professor Muldrow once again. And I'm going to show you how Java does the basic if statement or decision statement. Here on this slide, you see an example of just a single option if. We say if the GPA is greater than or equal to 2.0, then print application accepted. Okay. There's also the if-else statement. That means if your condition, in this case, GPA greater than or equal to 2.0 is true, you say, welcome to Mars University. If it's not true, you come down to the else and you say application denied. Now, whatever the condition is needs to be in parentheses in the if. If you have just an else, you do not put a condition with just an else. And here you have your relational operators. Is equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and of course, greater than or equal to. Now, what you look at on the right is example of an if-else. I'm going to enter two numbers, and then I'm going to enter either an A to add or anything else to subtract, and it has to be a capital A, according to this condition right here. So if I run this program, so I'll put my first number, say it's 16, then a 7, then I'll do a capital A. Notice it worked. It added it. It added the numbers. But then if I do 16 and 7 again, and I type an S, well, it subtracted. Now, as it turns out, I didn't have to type an S. Suppose I typed like a W. It's not an A, therefore we subtract. Now, another example is if you have more than one condition to check, you can use an else if statement. An else if statement does have a test condition. Wherever you see if, you must have some type of test condition in parentheses. Like, for example, here we have if x is greater than 0, then print positive. Else if, that means if you get to this else, that means x is not greater than 0. Now you're going to check if x is less than 0. If it is, you'll print negative. And if you end up at that last else, which doesn't have an if, that means the first two conditions were both false. X is not greater than 0. X is also not less than 0, which means there's only one option. It has to be 0, and you print a 0. Now in this code, as you can see, I have several else ifs. There's really no limit to how many else ifs you can have in a program. Now I'm going all lowercase, and I say if my op is an A, then you add S, subtract, M, multiply, D, divide, and anything besides those four letters will give me an invalid operation. So let's run that program and see what we get. So if I type 16, 7, type a lowercase a, works. Seven, lowercase s, we subtract. And a lowercase m means we multiply. And a lowercase d means we divide. Now, if I enter any other letter besides those four, like say a capital A, that is considered invalid. Why is it considered invalid? Well, because we did not check for capital letters in our code, and Java is case sensitive. So a capital A and a lowercase a are not considered the same character. Well, suppose you do want to check for uppercase letters. Well, if you're going to do that, you need to check for if it's either an uppercase A or a lowercase a. And for that, you need logical operators. Whenever you have two or more conditions to check, you must put a logical operator either before or in between. For the ones that go in between, you have the two ampersands, which refers to and. If you have two ampersands in the middle, that means both conditions must be true for the entire thing to be true. If you have an or, which is the two straight up and down lines in the middle, that means you only need one of the two conditions to be true. As long as you get one condition true, then the whole thing is true. The exclamation point stands for not. All not does is flip, if you will, the result of a condition. So if a condition comes up true, you put not in front, that flips it to false. If the condition is false, with not in front, that flips it to true. So now let's look at part 3 of this code. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if op is equal to a lowercase a or if it's equal to an uppercase a. Now, in case you're wondering about when to use an or an and, here's what you need to ask yourself. When you have two conditions, is it possible for both conditions to be true at the same time for the same value? In this case, we're asking, can the variable op have both the value lowercase a and uppercase a? No, they can't. It is impossible for a variable to have two values. So if you have two conditions and it is impossible for them to be true at the same time, you use or. If it is possible for those two conditions to be true at the same time, you use and. But in this case, we're using or. So either uppercase a or lowercase a for addition, lowercase or uppercase s for subtraction, lowercase or uppercase m for multiplication, lowercase or uppercase d for division. And we're also going to check if we're going to divide by 0. We don't want to divide by 0. So let's run this. I'll use the capital letters in the output this time. We'll say 16 and 7, and now I'll use a capital A, and that worked. Capital S means subtract. Capital M means multiply. Capital D means divide. Now here I'm going to try to divide by 0, capital D, and I get an invalid operation, which for our purposes is fine. And finally, 7, and throw in any other letter like an X, and that is an invalid operation. So there you've seen how to use an if-else, an else-if statement, and how to use logical operators and an or in Java code. If you have any questions, please send me an email at kmuldrow@lbcc.edu.